The stars looked the same as they had for the past 3 months. Navigator Kethmore stared at the display screen showing the small blue planet below. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for such a complex world, Kethmore stretched his long arms and checked the time. His shift would end in 2 hours. Then he could return to his sleeping pod and forget about this boring assignment. The Zephyrian High Command had sent their ship to watch the humans, but the humans did nothing interesting. They fought small wars, built primitive machines, and sent weak radio signals into space. The maintenance alarm beeped softly. Kethmore sighed and walked to the quantum communication array. The machine was older than he was, but it still worked perfectly. He opened the control panel and began the routine check. First, he tested the power levels. Normal, then he checked the signal. Processos. Also normal. The third test required him to activate the transmission array for exactly 3 seconds. This would send a tiny pulse into space to make sure the system worked. Kethmore had done this test hundreds of times. He pressed the activation button and counted 1, 2, 3, but his finger slipped. Instead of releasing the button, he pressed it harder. The array hummed with power and sent a much stronger signal than planned. The pulse shot out in all directions, carrying with it the ship's location, mathematical data, and basic information about Zephyrian technology. Kethmore stared at the readings in horror. The signal was 50 times stronger than it should have been. Worse, it was aimed directly at Earth's solar system. He quickly shut down the array and ran to get Fleet Commander Vextal, 300 miles above Earth. Dr. Lisa Grant was having trouble staying awake. The night shift at the radio telescope was always quiet. Most of the time, she listened to natural sounds from space. Pulsars spinning, gas clouds moving. Sometimes meteors burning up in distant atmospheres. Tonight felt different. Lisa had been working as a radio astronomer for 8 years, and she had learned to trust her instincts. She adjusted her headphones and fine-tuned the receivers. The usual background noise filled her ears, but then she heard something new. The signal was faint but clearly artificial. It had a pattern that natural sources could never make. Mathematical sequences in prime numbers. Complex equations that showed advanced knowledge of physics. Lisa's hands shook as she recorded the transmission. She called her supervisor, Dr. Kevin Adams, who was sleeping in his office. "Kevin, wake up. You need to hear this." Kevin stumbled to Lisa's workstation, rubbing his eyes. "What is it? Another false alarm? Listen." Lisa played the recording. The signal repeated every few minutes, always the same pattern. Kevin's expression changed from annoyance to amazement to fear. "Where is it coming from?" he asked. Lisa pointed to her screen. "Somewhere near the moon." "But Kevin, this isn't human technology. The mathematics are too advanced. Some of these equations, we haven't even discovered them yet." Kevin picked up the secure phone that connected directly to NORAD. "General Davis? This is Dr. Adams at the radio telescope. We have a situation." General Paul Davis was already awake when the call came. He rarely slept more than 4 hours at a time. 25 years in the military had taught him that threats could appear without warning. "What kind of situation, Doctor?" "We've detected what appears to be an alien transmission. It's clearly artificial and shows knowledge beyond our current science." Davis was quiet for a long moment. "Are you certain it's not human?" "Could it be? From the Chinese or Russians?" "No, sir. The signal is coming from space, and the mathematics are unlike anything we've seen." "General, I think we're looking at genuine first contact." Davis felt his stomach drop. First contact scenarios were always theoretical. The military had plans for many things, but talking to aliens was not one of them. "Don't tell anyone else about this. I'm sending a team to your location." Within an hour, black vehicles surrounded the radio telescope. Military personnel in plain clothes took control of the facility. Lisa and Kevin were moved to a secure room where they could continue. Monitoring the signal under military supervision, the transmission continued to repeat. Each time, the pattern was identical. Prime numbers from 2 to 97. Then a sequence showing pi to 50 decimal places. Then equations describing atomic structure, gravity, and electromagnetic radiation. Captain Steve Rogers arrived with the technical team. He was a nuclear submarine commander who had been pulled from his ship for this emergency. His job was to assess whether the signal represented a military threat. "Dr. Grant," he said, "in your opinion, is this signal aggressive or peaceful?" Lisa looked at the data streaming across her monitors. "I think it's peaceful." "The mathematics are educational, like a textbook? If they wanted to threaten us, they would probably send different information." "But they're watching us," Rogers pointed out. "The signal is coming from near our moon. They're in our backyard." Meanwhile, aboard the Zephyrian ship, panic was spreading. Fleet Commander Vextal paced the bridge while his officers tried to assess the damage. The accidental signal had revealed their presence to the humans, violating the most important law of Zephyrian space exploration. "How long before they respond?" Vextal asked his communications officer. "Unknown, Commander. Their technology is primitive, but they have shown surprising innovation. They may decode our transmission within hours." Vextal studied the data about Earth's military capabilities. The humans had nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, and biological weapons. They maintained large standing armies and had fought wars continuously for thousands of years. If they discovered the Zephyrian ship, they would likely attack immediately. "Sir," said Science Officer Yexnal, "the Galactic Council will impose severe punishment if they discover we contacted a pre-spaceflight civilization." "Then we must handle this ourselves," Vextal decided. "Monitor all Earth communications. If they respond to our signal, we need to assess whether they represent a threat to galactic security." Back on Earth, the debate was just beginning. President Janet Moore had been briefed on the situation and was meeting with her top advisors. The Secretary of Defense wanted to treat the aliens as hostile until proven otherwise. The NASA administrator argued for peaceful contact. The scientific community was divided between excitement and terror. "What if we ignore the signal?" asked one advisor. "It's too late for that," General Davis replied. "They know we're here and they're watching us. The question is whether we respond or wait for them to make the next move." Dr. Grant was asked to prepare a response message. She worked through the night, creating a mathematical sequence that would show Earth's peaceful intentions. But unknown to her, Zephyrians had very different ideas about what human mathematics might mean. The accidental contact had begun a chain of events that would either lead to humanity's first step into the galactic community or its complete destruction. Neither species understood how much danger they were all in. The White House Situation Room had never felt so crowded. President Janet Moore sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by advisors who all had different opinions about what to do. The alien signal had been playing on repeat for 6 hours, and every expert in the room had a different theory about what it meant. Secretary of Defense Carl Brown leaned forward in his chair. "Madam President, we need to assume this is a threat until proven otherwise. Any civilization that can travel between stars has weapons we cannot imagine." NASA Administrator Dr. Rita Fox shook her head. "Carl, you're being paranoid. The signal contains mathematical proofs and scientific data. This is how scientists would try to communicate with a new species, or how they would test our intelligence." "Before attacking," Brown replied, "we have no idea what their intentions are." President Moore looked tired. She had been in office for 2 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. "What does the scientific community recommend?" Dr. Fox opened her folder. "Dr. Grant and her team believe we should respond with our own mathematical sequence. Something that shows we understand their message and want to communicate." "Absolutely not," General Davis interrupted from his seat at the far end of the table. "Any response reveals our capabilities. We should maintain radio silence until we know more about their intentions." The debate continued for another hour. Half the room wanted to respond immediately. The other half wanted to wait and observe. President Moore finally made her decision. "We will prepare a response, but we will not send it until I give direct authorization. I want our best scientists working on this, but everything stays classified." At MIT, software engineer Jake Miller had been working without sleep for 18 hours. The government had brought him the alien signal and asked him to decode it. Jake was one of the best code breakers in the world, but this was unlike anything he had ever seen. The signal was incredibly complex. It contained layers of information, like a book written inside another book. The first layer was simple mathematics. The second layer showed star charts of nearby solar systems. The third layer contained what looked like a greeting in symbolic form. Jake's hands flew across his keyboard as he worked to translate the symbols. The aliens had used geometric shapes to represent concepts. A circle meant wholeness or peace. A triangle meant direction or purpose. A square meant stability or structure. When he finally decoded the message, Jake stared at his screen in amazement. The aliens were apologizing. They had not meant to contact Earth. The signal was an accident, and they were sorry for the intrusion. Jake immediately called his government contact. "You need to see this. The aliens are not threatening us. They're apologizing." But Jake's discovery came too late. Earth's response was already being prepared, and the military had insisted on including data about human technology and defensive capabilities. They wanted to show the aliens that Earth was not helpless. The response message was a mathematical sequence that included information about human space travel, nuclear technology, and military satellites. To human minds, it was a reasonable way to establish communication. To the aliens, it would seem like a threat. Aboard the Zephyrian ship, Fleet Commander Vextal was growing more worried by the hour. His science officers had been analyzing Earth's radio transmissions, and what they found disturbed him. "Commander," said Communications Officer Zexrel, "the humans have thousands of nuclear weapons pointed at each other. They have fought wars. On every continent, their history is filled with violence." Vextal studied the data. The humans had developed nuclear weapons only 80 years after discovering electricity. They had used these weapons against each other. They maintained huge armies and spent enormous resources on military equipment. "What about their space capabilities?" Vextal asked. "Limited but growing rapidly. They have artificial satellites, space stations, and primitive spacecraft. Their technology is advancing faster than any species we have observed." Science Officer Yex now brought disturbing news. "Sir, our cultural analysis suggests the humans are extremely territorial and aggressive. They have never encountered another intelligent species, so they may view us as a threat to their entire planet." Vextal made a decision that would have terrible consequences. "Prepare a priority message to the home fleet. Tell them we have encountered a potentially hostile species that has detected our presence." The message was sent through quantum communication, reaching the Zephyrian homeworld instantly. Within hours, the 7th Battle Fleet received orders to proceed to Earth's solar system and extract the reconnaissance ship on Earth. The debate about responding to the aliens continued. Dr. Grant had been working with linguist Professor Helen Baker to create a more sophisticated communication protocol. They wanted to send music, art, and poetry along with mathematics to show the peaceful side of human culture. "The mathematics are important," Dr. Grant explained to the military advisors, "but they only show our intelligence. We need to show our humanity," General Davis disagreed. "We need to show our strength. If they think we're weak, they might decide to invade." The military won the argument. Earth's response would be primarily technical, showing human achievements in science and engineering. The message would demonstrate that humanity was advanced enough to be respected, but not so advanced as to be threatening. Captain Steve Rogers was put in charge of coordinating the response. He had been studying the alien signal for days, trying to understand what it meant. Like most military officers, he assumed the aliens were conducting reconnaissance before an invasion. "They're testing us," he told his team. "They want to know how we think, how we communicate, how we defend ourselves. Our response needs to be careful but confident." The response message was completed after 3 days of work. It contained mathematical proofs showing human understanding of physics, chemistry, and astronomy. It included information about Earth's location, population, and technological capabilities. Most importantly, it showed that humans were united in their desire to communicate, but the humans made a critical error. They assumed the aliens would understand human intentions the same way humans did. They did not consider that a species from another world might interpret their message completely differently. When Earth's response was transmitted, it was received by the Zephyrian ship's automated defense systems. The computer analyzed the message and identified it as a military communication. The technical data was interpreted as a threat display. The information about human weapons was seen as a warning. Fleet Commander Vextal was in his command center when the alert sounded. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. What does it say?" "It appears to be a military challenge. They are showing us their weapons and defensive capabilities. They are telling us they are prepared to fight." Vextal felt his blood run cold. The humans were not just primitive beings who had accidentally detected his ship. They were warriors who had identified a threat and were preparing to eliminate it. "Send another message to the home fleet," he ordered. "Tell them the humans have responded with military threats. We need immediate reinforcement." The second message reached the Zephyrian battle fleet just as they were preparing to enter Earth's solar system. War Commander Thexvoar read the report and made his own decision. If the humans were preparing to fight, then the Zephyrians would be ready for war on Earth. Nobody knew that their peaceful attempt at communication had been interpreted as a declaration of war. Dr. Grant and her team waited anxiously for a response from the aliens. President Moore hoped for a breakthrough that would lead to peaceful contact. Instead, they had triggered a chain of events that would bring the most powerful military force in the galaxy directly to Earth's doorstep. The misunderstanding was complete, and both species were now convinced that the other represented a deadly threat. The next phase of the crisis was about to begin, and neither side was prepared for what would happen when the Zephyrian war fleet arrived. The International Space Station was not designed for military operations, but Commander Amy Clark had to make it work. NASA had ordered the station to change its orbit to get a better view of the area where the alien signal originated. Amy and her crew of 6 were now Earth's closest observers of whatever was happening near the moon. "Houston, we have visual confirmation," Amy reported into her radio. "There's definitely something out there. It's about 2 kilometers long and doesn't match any known satellite or spacecraft." On Earth, Mission Control was filled with tension. Flight Director Danny Walsh had been coordinating with military officials for 3 days. Every decision had to be approved by both NASA and the Department of Defense. "Amy, we're adjusting your orbit again," Danny said. "We need you to get within 50 kilometers of the object." 50 kilometers? Amy's voice showed her concern. "Danny, that's awfully close to something we don't understand." "Those are the orders. The military needs detailed photographs and sensor readings." Amy looked at her crew. They were all scared, but they were also professionals. "Copy that, Houston. Beginning orbital adjustment now." The space station fired its thrusters and began moving toward the alien ship. None of the humans realized that their approach would be seen as an attack maneuver by the Zephyrians. Aboard the Silent Whisper, alarms were ringing. Tactical Officer Kexvior stared at his display in disbelief. "Commander, the humans have launched a military spacecraft. It's approaching our position." Fleet Commander Vextal rushed to the tactical station. "How fast is it moving?" "Slowly, but it's definitely heading toward us. It appears to be armed with some kind of projectile weapons." Vextal studied the readings. The human spacecraft was much smaller than his ship, but it was clearly military. Its approach pattern was exactly what Zephyrian doctrine described as a reconnaissance attack. "Are they trying to board us?" Vextal asked. "Unknown, Commander. They're maintaining distance, but closing slowly. This could be a probe before a larger attack." Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Captain Steve Rogers received the flash message he had been dreading. The USS Atlanta was one of Earth's most advanced nuclear submarines, and it was now being prepared for a war that nobody understood. "Captain, we have new orders," reported his executive officer, Lieutenant Commander Jake Parker. "We're to surface and prepare for possible orbital bombardment." Steve looked at the message again. The military brass believed the aliens might attack from space. The submarine's mission was to survive the first strike and then launch nuclear missiles at any alien ships that entered Earth's atmosphere. "All hands, this is the captain," Steve announced over the ship's intercom. "We are surfacing to battle stations. This is not a drill." The Atlanta rose from the ocean depths for the first time in 2 months. Its nuclear missiles were armed and ready. Sonar operator Danny Walsh monitored the underwater environment while weapons officer Amy Clark prepared the launch systems. "Sir?" Amy reported, "All missiles are ready for launch. We have targeting data for low orbital targets." Steve nodded grimly. He had trained for nuclear war against human enemies, but this was different. They were preparing to shoot at beings from another world. When the submarine surfaced, its emergence was detected by every satellite and radar system in the region. The sudden appearance of a military vessel triggered automatic alerts on the Zephyrian ship. "Commander," shouted Kexvillar, "the humans have activated additional military assets. A large submarine has surfaced in the Pacific Ocean. It's armed with nuclear missiles." Vextal felt his worst fears confirmed. The humans were not just defending themselves. They were preparing a coordinated attack. The spacecraft approaching from above and the submarine surfacing below suggested a complex military operation. "Contact the home fleet immediately," Vextal ordered. "Tell them we are facing imminent attack from multiple human forces." At the radio telescope, Dr. Lisa Grant was becoming increasingly frustrated. The military had taken control of all communication attempts with the aliens. Every message had to be approved by General Davis, and most of her suggestions were rejected. "We're making a mistake," she told Professor Helen Baker. "The mathematics in their original signal suggest they're trying to be peaceful. But our responses are all technical and defensive." Helen agreed. She had been studying the alien signal from a linguistic perspective and had found patterns that suggested apology and regret. "Lisa, I think they're as scared of us as we are of them. Then why won't the military let us send a peaceful message? Because they think any sign of weakness will invite attack." Dr. Grant made a decision that would later be seen as either heroic or treasonous. She began working on an unauthorized message to the aliens. Using her personal computer, she created a simple mathematical sequence that expressed human desire for peace. The message was based on the Fibonacci sequence but modified to include symbols for cooperation and friendship. It was elegant, peaceful, and completely against military orders, but before Dr. Grant could send her message, General Davis made a decision that changed everything. He ordered all civilian radio transmissions to the aliens to stop immediately. From now on, only military channels will handle communication with the extraterrestrial contact, he announced. All civilian scientists are to stand down and await further orders. The sudden silence from Earth's scientific community was noticed immediately by the Zephyrians. For 3 days, they had been receiving mathematical sequences and technical data from the planet's surface. Now, all civilian communications had stopped. "Commander," reported Communications Officer Zexrel, "the humans have ceased all scientific transmissions. Only military signals remain active." Vextal understood what this meant. The humans had stopped pretending to be peaceful. They were now operating under complete military control, preparing for war. "How long until the fleet arrives?" he asked. 6 Earth days, Commander. We may not have that long." The humans appear to be preparing for immediate attack. On Earth. The silence was interpreted differently. President Janet Moore was meeting with her cabinet when the report came in. "Madam President," said Secretary of Defense Carl Brown, "the aliens have stopped responding to our communications. This could mean they're preparing to attack. Or it could mean they're waiting for us to make the next move," suggested Dr. Ritta. "Fox, we can't afford to wait," Brown replied. "Every hour gives them more time to study our defenses and plan their assault." President Moore felt the weight of the decision. "What do you recommend?" "Full military readiness. We activate every defense system we have and prepare for the worst." The order went out to military bases around the world. Fighter jets were scrambled and put on high alert. Nuclear submarines were positioned in strategic locations. Missile defense systems were activated. Major Kate Stone was in the cockpit of her F-22 fighter when the alert came. She and her squadron were ordered to patrol the skies above major cities, ready to intercept any alien aircraft. "This is insane," she told her wingmen over the radio. "We're preparing to fight spaceships with conventional fighters." "Orders are orders," came the reply. "If they come down here, we make them regret it." Kate looked up at the sky and wondered what was coming. Her weapons were designed to fight human aircraft, not alien technology. But she would do her duty, no matter how hopeless it seemed. The misunderstanding was now complete. Both sides had convinced themselves that the other was preparing for war. The Zephyrians believed the humans were a violent species planning to attack their ship. The humans believed the aliens were invaders who had come to destroy Earth. Fleet. Commander Vextal sent his final message to the home fleet. Human military forces are mobilizing for immediate attack. We cannot hold our position much longer. Please hurry. War Commander HFY received the message as his fleet entered the outer edges of Earth's solar system. He had brought 47 warships, enough to destroy every major city on the planet if necessary. "Increase speed to maximum," he ordered. "We're going to war." Neither side realized that they were about to fight the most unnecessary war in galactic history. The stage was set for a battle that would determine the fate of both species, and nobody knew how to stop it. Dr. Tony Kim was drinking his third cup of coffee when the gravity sensors at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory began screaming. The numbers on his screen made no sense. Something massive was approaching the outer edge of the solar system, and it was moving impossibly fast. "Director Walsh, you need to see this," Tony called across the control room. "We're detecting gravitational anomalies near Neptune's orbit." Director Pete Walsh hurried over to Tony's workstation. The data showed distortions in space-time that could only be caused by objects with enormous mass. But these objects were moving at speeds that defied everything humans knew about physics. "How many contacts?" Pete asked. 47 separate signatures, all moving in formation. "They'll reach Earth's orbit in less than 18 hours. Pete felt his stomach drop. One alien ship was a mystery. 47 ships was an invasion fleet within minutes. The data was transmitted to NORAD, the Pentagon, and the White House. Admiral Roy Green, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was pulled from a meeting to review the intelligence. "Are we certain these are artificial objects?" Admiral Green asked the briefing officer. "Yes, sir. The gravitational signatures are consistent with manufactured spacecraft. Each one is approximately 3 kilometers long. They're traveling in a precise military formation." Admiral Green studied the tactical display. The alien fleet was approaching from the direction of Jupiter, using the planet's gravity to increase their speed. It was a classic military maneuver, something human naval forces had used for centuries. "Estimated time to Earth? 16 hours, sir. Then we have 16 hours to prepare for war." The president was awakened at 3 in the morning. She sat in her bedroom, still wearing her pajamas, as Secretary of Defense Carl Brown explained the situation. "Madam President, we're facing a full-scale alien invasion. Our recommendations are to declare martial law and activate every military asset we have." President Janet Moore tried to process what she was hearing. "Are we certain they're hostile?" "Ma'am, you don't send 47 warships to make friends. This is clearly a military operation. What about trying to communicate with them? We've been trying for a week. They stopped responding to our messages 3 days ago. Now they're bringing an invasion fleet." The president made the hardest decision of her life. Issue the order. Full military mobilization. And get me the British Prime Minister, the Russian President, and the Chinese Premier on the line. If we're going to fight, we need to fight together. At Nellis Air Force Base, Major Kate Stone was briefing her squadron when the alert came through. Every fighter pilot in the world was being called to active duty. "Listen up, people," Kate told her pilots. "We're facing an enemy with technology we don't understand. Our missiles probably won't work. Our guns probably won't work. but we're going to fight anyway. Lieutenant Sam Brooks, her youngest pilot, raised his hand. Major, what's the mission? Kate looked at her pilots. They were all young, all brave, and all probably going to die. The mission is to defend Earth. We buy time for the ground forces to evacuate civilians. We make the aliens pay for every mile of sky they take, and if we can't stop them, then we make sure they remember that humans don't surrender. The pilots began preparing their aircraft. They loaded every missile and bullet they could carry. It wouldn't be enough, but it was all they had. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, Captain Steve Rogers was receiving new orders. The nuclear submarine, USS Atlanta, and 11 other submarines were being positioned around the globe. Their mission was to survive the initial alien attack and then launch nuclear missiles at any alien ships that entered Earth's atmosphere. Captain, reported Lieutenant Commander Jake Parker, all missile systems are ready. We have targeting coordinates for the incoming fleet. Steve looked at the tactical display. The alien ships were still millions of miles away, but they were approaching fast. Nuclear missiles would be useless against targets in deep space, but if the aliens came close to Earth, the submarines might get a chance to fight back. All hands, this is the captain, Steve announced. We are now at war with an alien invasion force. Our job is to protect Earth and its people. We will not fail. The submarine crew prepared for battle. They had trained for nuclear war against human enemies, but this was different. They were about to fight beings from another world. Commander Amy Clark was still aboard the International Space Station when the alien fleet was detected. She and her crew were now the closest human observers to the approaching enemy. Houston. We have long-range visual contact, Amy reported. The alien fleet is maintaining tight formation. They're definitely military vessels. Amy, we're ordering you to evacuate the station, came the reply from Mission Control. A rescue shuttle is being prepared. Negative, Houston, we're staying. Someone needs to observe the enemy fleet and report on their capabilities. Amy looked at her crew. They were all scared, but they all nodded in agreement. They would stay and do their duty, even if it meant they would die. The alien fleet was now visible to powerful telescopes around the world. The ships were sleek and deadly, unlike anything humans had ever built. They moved in perfect formation. Like a school of metal fish swimming through space. War, Commander HFY stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display. Earth was now clearly visible, a small blue dot surrounded by the debris of human civilization. Satellites, space stations, and primitive spacecraft cluttered the planet's orbital space. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we're detecting massive military mobilization on the planet's surface. They're preparing for ground combat. HFY was impressed despite himself. The humans knew they were outmatched, but they were preparing to fight anyway. It was either very brave or very stupid. What about their space-based defenses? Minimal. They have a few armed satellites and one small space station. Nothing that could threaten our fleet. And their surface weapons? Thousands of nuclear missiles, chemical weapons, and conventional explosives. Their military technology is primitive but extensive. HFY studied the data. The humans were clearly a warlike species, but they were also incredibly determined. They had united their entire planet in preparation for this battle. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the reconnaissance ship, reported the communications. Officer, Fleet Commander Vextal appeared on the main screen. He looked tired and worried. War Commander, the humans have been making increasingly aggressive moves. Their space station approached to within 50 kilometers of our position. Their submarine fleet has surfaced and is targeting our location. Are they planning to attack? I believe so. They've stopped all peaceful communications and are operating under complete military control. HFY made his decision. All ships. Assume battle formation. Charge plasma cannons and prepare boarding parties. We're going to end this before it starts. The alien fleet spread out into attack formation as it approached Earth. 47 warships, each capable of destroying a city, prepared for battle. On Earth, radar operators watched the enemy fleet approach. The aliens were slowing down, taking their time to study Earth's defenses. They were professional soldiers, preparing for a careful and methodical attack. "They're splitting into 3 groups," reported an operator at NORAD. "One group is heading for North America, one for Europe, and one for Asia." Admiral Green nodded. Grimly, "They're planning to attack all major population centers simultaneously. Classic invasion strategy." Fighter squadrons around the world took off to meet the enemy. They flew in tight formations, their weapons ready. The pilots knew they were flying to their deaths, but they flew anyway. Nuclear submarines surfaced in oceans around the globe. Their missile silos opened like deadly flowers, ready to launch humanity's most powerful weapons. Ground forces took positions around major cities. Soldiers with rifles and tanks prepared to fight creatures from another world. The stage was set for the greatest battle in human history. 2 species, both convinced the other was a deadly enemy, prepared to fight for the survival of their civilizations. Neither side knew that the entire conflict was based on a misunderstanding. Both humans and aliens wanted peace, but fear and miscommunication had brought them to the brink of war. The alien fleet was now only hours away from Earth. Soon, the shooting would begin, and thousands of beings on both sides would die in a war that nobody wanted. The final countdown had begun. The first shot of the war was fired by mistake. Lieutenant Danny Walsh was operating the radar at Peterson Air Force Base when he detected a small object separating from the alien fleet. The object was moving toward Earth at high speed, and it appeared to be headed directly for major population centers. "Contact! Incoming projectile from the alien fleet," Danny shouted into his radio. "It's moving fast and appears to be targeting Denver." The object was actually a Zephyrian communication probe, designed to establish better contact with Earth's surface. But to human radar operators it looked exactly like an attack missile. Air Force Colonel Ben Miller was in the command center. When the alert came through, he had been given clear orders about what to do if the aliens attacked first. "All units, this is Colorado Command. We have incoming hostile fire. You are authorized to engage." Fighter jets scrambled from 3 different bases. Major Kate Stone was leading the intercept squadron when she got visual contact with the probe. "Target acquired," she reported over the radio. "It's small, maybe the size of a car, but it's definitely artificial." "Take it out," came the order from ground control. Kate locked her missiles onto the probe and fired. 2 air-to-air missiles streaked through the sky and hit the alien device. The explosion lit up the morning sky like a small star. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, alarms began blaring immediately. War Commander HFY rushed to the tactical station to see what had happened. "Sir, the humans have destroyed our communication probe," reported the tactical officer. "They fired missiles at it without warning." HFY felt his worst fears confirmed. The humans had fired the first shot. They had destroyed a peaceful communication device, which meant they had no interest in talking. "All ships, battle stations," he ordered. "The humans have opened fire. We are now at war." The alien fleet immediately changed formation. Ships that had been approaching slowly now accelerated toward Earth. Weapon systems that had been powered down were brought online. The Zephyrians were no longer coming to rescue their reconnaissance ship. They were coming to fight. The first alien attack targeted Earth's military satellites. Invisible beams of energy reached out from the fleet and touched the satellites orbiting. High above the planet, one by one, the satellites went dark. Within minutes, Earth's global positioning system was destroyed. Military communications became difficult. Weather monitoring stopped working. At NORAD, General Paul Davis watched his command screens go blank. "They're blinding us," he told his staff. "Classic military strategy. Take out communications first, then attack." "Sir, we've lost contact with 60% of our satellite network," reported an operator. "The aliens are systematically destroying our space-based assets. What about our ground-based systems?" "Still operational, but we're operating blind above 50,000 feet. Davis picked up the red phone that connected directly to the White House. "Madam President, the aliens have begun their attack. They've crippled our satellite network. President Janet Moore was in the Situation Room with her top advisors. The news hit her like a physical blow. Are there any casualties? Not yet, but the attack is just beginning. Ma'am, I need authorization to respond with nuclear weapons. The president looked around the room. Every face showed the same grim determination. They were at war now, whether they wanted it or not. Authorization granted, she said quietly. God help us all. In the Pacific Ocean, Captain Lucy Torres received the flash message she had been dreading. The USS Virginia was one of 12 nuclear submarines positioned around the globe, and she now had orders to launch ballistic missiles at the alien fleet. Captain, we have launch authorization, reported her weapons officer, Lieutenant Sam Brooks. All missiles are targeted and ready. Lucy stared at the launch codes. Once she sent those missiles into space, there would be no turning back. Earth would be committed to a nuclear war against an alien civilization. Ma'am, said her executive officer, Commander Nick Gray, the longer we wait, the closer they get to populated areas. I know, Lucy replied. But once we fire these missiles, we're committed to this fight. Are we sure there's no other way? Sam Brooks checked his instruments. Captain, they've already attacked our satellites. They fired first. Lucy made her decision. All missiles prepare for launch. Target the largest concentration of alien ships. But before she could give the final order, Nick Gray spoke up. Captain, what if we're wrong? What if this is all a misunderstanding? Then we're about to make the biggest mistake in human history, Lucy replied. But we can't take that chance. If they're here to destroy us, we have to fight back. At the same time, Dr. Lisa Grant was working frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying the alien signals for a week, and she was convinced that something was wrong with the military's interpretation. Helen, look at this, she told Professor Helen Baker. The original alien signal contained mathematical patterns that suggest regret and apology. These aren't the communications of an invading force. Helen studied the data. You're right, but Lisa, it's too late. The shooting has already started. Maybe not. I've been working on a new translation protocol. If I can get this message too, the aliens, maybe we can stop this war before it really begins. But Dr. Grant faced a major problem. All civilian communications had been shut down. The military controlled every radio transmission, and they weren't interested in peaceful messages. We need to get this information to someone who can act on it, Helen said. But who? The president is surrounded by military advisors who think we're under attack. Aboard the Zephyrian flagship, Science Officer Yexnal was studying the human response patterns. Something didn't make sense about their behavior. War Commander, he called out, I'm detecting unusual patterns in human military movements. The HFY was busy coordinating the attack on Earth's satellites. What kind of patterns? Sir, their forces are defensive, not offensive. They're positioning themselves to protect their cities, not to attack our fleet. Of course they're defensive. We have superior firepower. No, sir, you don't understand. If they were planning to attack us, they would position their forces differently. This looks more like they're expecting us to attack them. The HFY paused in his planning. Are you suggesting they think we're here to invade? It's possible, sir. Their satellite network was primitive. They may not have understood our peaceful intentions. Back on Earth, the nuclear submarines were still waiting for final launch orders. Captain Lucy Torres had her finger on the launch button, but something was holding her back. Sam, run a diagnostic on the alien fleet movement, she ordered. Captain? Just do it. Analyze their approach pattern and tell me what you see. Sam worked on his computers for several minutes. Ma'am, this is strange. They're not moving like an invasion force. They're maintaining high orbit, not descending to attack altitude. What does that mean? If they wanted to destroy our cities, they would come lower. This formation is more like they're trying to stay out of our weapon range. Nick Gray looked up from his station. Captain, what if they're as scared of us as we are of them? Lucy felt a terrible doubt creeping into her mind. What if the aliens weren't here to attack? What if they were just as confused and frightened as the humans were? Hold the launch. she ordered. I need to think about this. Ma'am, we have direct orders from the president. I know what our orders are. But I'm not starting a nuclear war based on a misunderstanding. The war was balanced on a knife's edge. Both fleets were armed and ready to fight. Both commanders believed the other side had fired first. Both species were convinced they were defending themselves against an aggressive enemy, but small voices of doubt were beginning to speak up. A submarine captain who questioned her orders. A scientist who believed the aliens were peaceful. An alien science officer who wondered if the humans were just defending themselves. The next few minutes would determine whether two civilizations would destroy each other in a war based on fear and misunderstanding, or whether someone would find a way to stop the violence before it consumed them all. High above Earth, the alien fleet continued its approach. On the planet's surface, nuclear missiles sat in their silos, waiting for the order to launch. In the space between them, the truth waited to be discovered by someone brave enough to look for it. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance. The world was 30 seconds away from nuclear war when Jimmy Parker made a decision that changed everything. Jimmy was 19 years old and worked at a small radio station in rural Montana. He had been listening to military communications all morning, and he knew that Earth was about to launch nuclear missiles at the alien fleet. Jimmy had also been listening to Dr. Lisa Grant's emergency broadcasts. She had been trying to reach anyone who would listen, explaining that the aliens were peaceful and that the whole conflict was based on a misunderstanding. This is crazy, Jimmy said to himself as he looked at his small radio transmitter. The equipment was old and weak, but it was one of the few civilian radio systems that the military hadn't shut down. Jimmy had an idea. The ionosphere sometimes bounced radio signals in unexpected ways. If he could boost Dr. Grant's signal at just the right frequency, it might reach the alien fleet with enough power to get their attention. He quickly rewired his transmitter, connecting it to the station's emergency broadcast antenna. It was dangerous and probably illegal, but Jimmy didn't care. He was going to try to save the world. Dr. Grant was in her laboratory, still trying to perfect her translation of the alien message. She had figured out that the original signal was an apology, not a threat. The aliens had been saying sorry for accidentally contacting Earth. Helen, I think I've got it, she told Professor Helen Baker. The alien message wasn't just an apology. It was also a greeting protocol. They were trying to introduce themselves politely. Can we send them the same kind of message? I think so. But we need more power than this equipment can provide. That's when Jimmy's voice came through on her emergency radio. Dr. Grant, this is Jimmy Parker at KZMT Radio in Montana. I've been listening to your broadcasts. I can boost your signal? If you can get it to me. Lisa grabbed her radio. Jimmy, this is Dr. Grant. Are you serious? Can you really amplify our signal? Yes, ma'am. I've got access to a 50,000-watt transmitter, and the ionosphere is perfect right now. If you can get me your message, I can bounce it off the atmosphere and send it straight to those alien ships. Lisa looked at Helen. It was their only chance. Jimmy, I'm sending you the data now. Please hurry. Meanwhile, aboard the Zephyrian flagship, War Commander the XVOR was preparing to order a full attack on Earth's major cities. His weapons were charged and his targeting systems were locked on. But Science Officer Yexnau was still studying the human response patterns. Sir, I really think we should reconsider, Yexnau said. The human military formations are purely defensive. They're not trying to attack us. They're trying to protect their cities. They destroyed our communication probe, the XVOR replied. That was an act of war. What if they thought it was a weapon? What if they were just defending themselves? Fleet. Commander Vextal joined the conversation from his reconnaissance ship. War Commander, my analysis of human behavior suggests they might be as confused as we are. They've been trying to communicate with us for days. Then why did they stop? Maybe their military leaders took control just like ours did, the XVOR hesitated. The doubt was growing in his mind, but he had orders from the Zephyrian High Command. Earth had been classified as a hostile threat, and his job was to eliminate that threat. On Earth, nuclear submarines around the world were receiving final launch orders. Captain Lucy Torres was still hesitating, but pressure was mounting from her superiors. "Captain," Lieutenant Sam Brooks reported, "we're receiving direct orders from Admiral Green. Launch immediately or face court-martial." Lucy stared at the launch button. Everything in her training told her to follow orders, but her instincts told her something was wrong. "Captain Torres," came a voice over the secure radio, "this is Admiral Green. You will launch your missiles immediately." "That's a direct order." Lucy took a deep breath. "Admiral, respectfully requesting a 60-second delay. I'm detecting unusual readings from the alien fleet. Negative. Launch now." "Sir, what if we're wrong about their intentions?" There was a long pause. Finally, Admiral Green's voice came back, quieter than before. "Captain, we can't take that chance. If we're wrong and we don't act, millions of people could die. And if we're wrong and we do act, millions of aliens could die." Jimmy Parker was working frantically with his radio equipment when Dr. Grant's signal came through. The message was a complex mathematical sequence that included the same apology pattern the aliens had used, but in reverse. It was humanity's way of saying sorry for the misunderstanding. "Here goes nothing," Jimmy said as he activated his transmitter at full power. The signal shot up into the ionosphere, bounced off the charged particles in the upper atmosphere, and streaked toward the alien fleet at the speed of light. The transmission reached the Zephyrian ships, just as War Commander Thexvoar was about to give the order to attack. The communications officer looked up in surprise. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's using our own apology protocol." "What does it say?" The officer worked quickly to translate the message. "Sir, they're apologizing for the misunderstanding. They're saying they didn't mean to threaten us. They want to communicate peacefully." Thexvoar stared at the translation. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. This is definitely a peaceful greeting using proper diplomatic protocols. They're asking for a chance to start over." Fleet Commander Vextal's voice came over the communication system. "War Commander, I'm also receiving peaceful signals from multiple locations on the planet. I think they're trying to tell us this whole conflict was a mistake." Thexvoar felt a wave of relief wash over him. "All ships, stand down weapons. Do not fire. Repeat, do not fire." On Earth, Captain Lucy Torres was still staring at the launch button when her communications officer called out, "Captain, we're receiving a message from the alien fleet. They're powering down their weapons." "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am. Energy readings are dropping across their entire formation. They're also transmitting what appears to be a peaceful response to Dr. Grant's message." Lucy stepped back from the launch. "Console, stand down all weapons. Cancel the launch order." Similar scenes were playing out on submarines around the world. The nuclear attack was called off with only seconds to spare. President Janet Moore was in the Situation Room when the reports started coming in. "Madam President, the aliens are responding to our peaceful message. They're standing down their weapons and requesting formal diplomatic contact." The president felt tears of relief in her eyes. "Thank God, contact the United Nations. We're going to need to set up a formal first contact protocol." Within hours, representatives from both species were meeting aboard the International Space Station. Commander Amy Clark welcomed the first alien diplomat to visit a human facility. War Commander Thexvoar personally apologized for the misunderstanding that had nearly led to war. "We thought you were an aggressive species preparing to attack us," he explained through a translation device. "We thought you were invaders coming to destroy us," President Moore replied via video link. "It seems we were both wrong." Dr. Grant became Earth's first official xenolinguist, helping to establish permanent communication protocols between the two species. Captain Rogers was promoted to head the new Planetary Defense Coordination Office, working with alien advisors to prevent future misunderstandings. The Zephyrians shared some of their technology with Earth, but both species agreed to proceed slowly. Cultural exchange programs were established. Trade agreements were negotiated. Most importantly, both civilizations learned that the universe was safer when people talked instead of fought. Years later, children like Emma Collins and Tyler Ross grew up in a world where humans and aliens worked together. They learned in school about the day when the galaxy almost lost two entire civilizations because of fear and misunderstanding. Jimmy Parker became famous as the young man who helped save the world with a radio transmitter and some quick thinking. Dr. Grant won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work in establishing interspecies communication. The accidental signal that had started everything became known as the fortunate mistake. It proved that sometimes the best things in life happen when we least expect them. Earth took its first steps toward joining a galactic community of peaceful species. And somewhere in space, other civilizations learned that humanity was not a threat to be feared, but a partner to be welcomed. The war that never happened became the peace that changed everything.